The STB-556 has rapidly become renowned in the COD community as the gun to use. It's rare you'll end up in a lobby where this weapon isn't making at least an appearance, which should be telling you something. But just how good is it? Is it really the one weapon to rule them all? Or is there a bit of a placebo effect within the community, making this weapon out to be more than it is? G'day there once again viewers, your mate Kamikaze78 here, and today we're going to be doing a weapon review for the STB-556. So, following suit with our review of the Lockman sub, which got a lot of positive feedback from you guys, here's how this video will be structured. We'll start things off by having a discussion about the weapon's statistics and where the weapon shines and, where it feels a bit like mud. Then we'll move on to some attachment setups and some of the best builds that you can run on the STB-556 based on the testing I've been doing as of late. And then we'll wrap things up with some final tips and tricks and some closing remarks about the weapon itself. As always, special thanks to sim.gg for being an amazing resource that feeds the statistical analysis of these videos. So, without further ado, let's get into things. And as always, we're going to start off with the damage model here. We've got a base damage model that runs a maximum damage of 33 out to a 15.2 meter range, dropping off eventually to an 18 damage readout at 47 meters and beyond. This effectively gives the STB-556 a 4-shot kill out to the 27.4 meter range by default, dropping down to a 5 and then 6-shot kill at the ranges listed respectively. Now, while that may not sound like the best deal in the world out of the gate, we do have to remember that the assault rifles in Call of Duty have an upper torso damage multiplier that moves the STB-556 in this case down to a 3-shot kill if you land your shots in that upper torso region. Landing your shots in the upper torso region also promises a more consistent 4-shot kill at range, but does eventually return you down to a 6-shot kill respectively that you will see on other parts of the body. Now, believe it or not, in the world of faster firing assault rifles, everything that we have mentioned here so far actually makes the STB-556 quite unique. It's the only faster firing assault rifle to have a 3-shot kill to the upper torso area, even within the maximum damage range. Of course, this weapon is statistically outdamaged by the likes of the Kastov 762 and 74U and even the TAC-56, but as I said, for a weapon that fires a bit more aggressively, like the M4s, Lockman, 556s, that sort of stuff, this weapon carries the most potent payload of the bunch. But the trade-off that we have as a result of that is the presence of a much more aggressive damage drop-off over range by comparison to those aforementioned rifles, which is going to be really noticeable anytime you try to pick a fight with anyone beyond that CQC environment. Let's keep that in mind for later, because it may be an opportunity for us to improve the weapon via some attachments. In the headshot department here, we find ourselves being able to achieve a 3-shot kill more consistently, and we continue to see the benefits with headshots taking a bullet to kill off the required total at most ranges, which is nothing to shrug away from in my opinion. So if we take this damage model and plug it into its rate of fire of 741 rounds per minute or 12.35 rounds per second, that produces some incredibly interesting results here. Much like the Lockman sub we covered in our last weapon review, we are actually staring at the assault rifle here with the best in class upper torso time to kill within the CQC environment in this game, clocking in at 162 milliseconds out to 15 meters. And it should be stated that nothing else in the assault rifle category actually beats this weapon in raw killing power in that CQC environment. Where the weapon does begin to struggle, however, is in the ranged department. Now, granted, between 30 and 46 meters, the weapon tends to hold its ground against other competitors in this area, but between 15 and 30 meters, weapons such as the M4, TAC-56, and Kastov 762 will begin to beat the weapon out and laugh all the way to the bank doing it. Now, in the headshot time to kill world as well, we do see the weapon dethroned a little bit here, as the STB-556 gains no real benefit in the headshot time to kill space in the CQC area of engagement, and, which is where the weapon is designed to be a little bit more dominant. Now, combine that with the recoil pattern that we're going to talk about here shortly, we're starting to see a theme with this weapon that goes along the lines of it being easy as piss to use, but lacking a skill ceiling that you can curve it up with that takes it one step further. And of course, we've got a muzzle velocity of 590 meters per second, which is standard for all assault rifles. And on the topic of recoil here, look, it may look a little bit ugly, but you'll be surprised just how comfortable this weapon feels to actually control. Generally speaking, the weapon kicks up with a slight inkling to pull to the left before sharply doglegging on itself to the right. The last few rounds of the burst are also grouped together pretty consistently on that right hand side dogleg. Once again, it looks a little bit scary, I'll give you guys that, but it's also very rare that you're going to be spraying 30 rounds downrange without lifting off the trigger at all. The very first part of this recoil, which being that little primary burst up and slightly to the left, is going to be your primary concern, and it's a pretty straight vertical recoil kick to manage depending on which barrel you equip. It's clearly a weapon that demands some respect as far as the trigger finger is concerned. There's been some times where I've lost control over the weapon and have fallen victim to the end of the burst spray pattern there, but if you limit your bursts, you'll be able to get away primarily by pulling down on your mouse or joystick and a smidge to the right to compensate for that early left-hand kink. There are a ton of barrel attachments available here, so I want to focus on a couple of the real highlights out of my testing so far. For one, the FTAC FB20 does a superb job at reeling in that early left-hand kink recoil and also reduces the heavier recoil that comes from the first few shots. As a result, this is going to be a star attraction of the barrel world should you want to build this weapon for a little bit of extra range. While the damage model doesn't really allow for it as much, it's really helpful. Little hint as to what's coming here in their upcoming builds for the gun. Additionally, the 16.5 inch Bruen S901 is the only barrel that really focuses on improving that ADS speed here, and while it does come with a pretty small penalty to the severity of the recoil, it's certainly not so detrimental that you can't counteract the impact with some tuning and some additional attachments. The 508mm rear guard, however, is clearly something you should just completely avoid because my god, look at that recoil. Moving on here, the cone of fire is practically on par with most assault rifles in the game, with a 5.8 degree cone of fire accuracy while moving and strafing. The only assault rifle in the game that beats out this baseline is the Kastov 74U. Moving on to the handling of the STB 556, we've once again got some really neat little tricks up our sleeve here. The reload time of 2.83 seconds is unfortunately not one of those, but is certainly manageable with some smart gameplay. Of course, you can perform some tricky reload animation cancelling to get there faster, which is going to take a bit of time to get used to, of course. The aiming down sight speed for the STB 556 is right down the middle of the assault rifle world, sitting in at 240 milliseconds. However, where the STB reigns supreme is in its sprint to fire speed, 83 milliseconds. This beats out most other weapons in the game right now, not just in the AR category, and is really a solid stat to have that complements this weapon's CQC prowess. Our TAC sprint to fire speed is also improved here as well, 158 milliseconds. So that's the STB 556 in a nutshell. Quite the attractive platform, it has to be said. A CQC menace with a recoil pattern that, despite its average damage output, is actually half decent at challenging other weapons at range. Sure, you may not be hitting very hard, but you're hitting often, which is also very important. Let's go over some builds here for the STB 556 that will help you take the weapon to the next level based on some testing I've done. Build number one today is all about being the jack of all trades on the battlefield. It takes the recoil pattern and aims to further improve on it to counteract the weapon's lacking potency at range, and gives it just that means to be a little bit more flexible by sheer volume of accurate fire. And as we alluded to earlier, the star attraction of this loadout is 100% the barrel attachment, the FTAC FB20. As you guys can see in the clip in the background right now, it doesn't look like the weapon's even recoiling at all. It is just a laser beam and so easy to manage, and really lets you stretch the weapon out just that little bit further than what you may be already used to. Now, the FTAC C11 Riser and the Bruen Q900 Grip are both there to counteract the aiming down sight speed penalties that the FTAC FB20 brings up to the board, and while it doesn't completely equalize it out entirely, it does bring it back up to a relatively acceptable level. You'll see I'm running the 5.56 high velocity ammunition as well here. I've been really coming to enjoy the high velocity ammo in this game, and just the extra flexibility it brings to loadouts that are designed to be a little bit more potent at longer range. Less leading on targets can be very helpful, and it's an attachment I'm sure will be very popular in Warzone coming up as well. I've also got an optic on this build here because while the iron sights on the STB 556 I've found to be really useful and actually quite easy to use, I thought it would be a good call to change things up and give me a bit more clarity at range. I must say, just as a final note on this loadout, this is the easiest weapon build I've ever used in the game as far as recoil control is concerned. Yes, the penalties to aim down sight speed does mean that you are somewhat counteracting the weapon's entire purpose of being a CQC powerhouse, but there's no denying just how much of an ease of use weapon this is, even at those extended distances, and it really does let you challenge more potent weapons at those ranges. So definitely worth considering. Build number 2 here is all about aggression. Aggression, aggression, aggression. All that pent up anger that's burning deep inside of you, this is the build that's all about unleashing that onto the poor son of a bitch that just happens to be on the other end of your barrel. And speaking of the barrel here, we've got the 16.5 Bruen S901. Once again, alluding to the fact that this is one of the only barrels on the gun that focuses on aiming down sights movement improvements. It's definitely worthwhile bringing about, even for a shoddier recoil pattern. We've also got the Bruen Q900 grip and F-Tac C11 riser here once again, both of these being present to once again double down on that aiming down sights movement speed. And as you can see in the gameplay here, this weapon's snappy. Combine that with the sprint to fire speed and the tac sprint to fire speed, you can honestly sprint around with this thing pretty aggressively and still get your sight up to your eye line quickly enough should you come across a target unexpectedly. The Bruen MX9 stock on here also makes an appearance, and we've got this CZ Sigma 4 optic once again. Look, it's just a favorite optic of mine right now, and while I also stress that once again, running iron sights on this gun is more than acceptable, I didn't feel like I needed any other attachments in other categories with this particular build and what it was trying to accomplish, so a bit of extra sight clarity never hurt. So that, from go to woe, is the review on the STB556. There is no denying, ladies and gentlemen, that this weapon is a popular pick for good reason. Just simply because it's an easy weapon to use, but it's also an extremely rewarding weapon to use. It may even be too easy to use for the reward that it brings to the table in that CQC environment. It truly does have the fastest TTK to body shots right now, which just makes it incredibly easy to pick up and use and not need to worry about getting better with it too much, because going for headshots in those CQC environments doesn't actually net you that big a result. Which loops me back to my point that we raised at the start of the video in the stats section, that being that this weapon is easy as piss to use, but it lacks a skill ceiling. Most of the other assault rifles in the game will come with headshot multipliers and headshot damage thresholds that will actually save you some time on your time to kill, thus making it more potent than what the STB556 actually is, which is the point I want to close out on with this video. The STB556 is great, but as you start to use different weapons and get better with them and start going for headshots more consistently, you'll actually start seeing a more effective end result than what this weapon can ever provide, as crazy as that sounds. Once again, that lacking skill ceiling does limit the weapon a little bit by its lacking reward for headshot damage by comparison to some of its competitors. But that's the note I want to leave today's video on. If you guys enjoyed it, be sure to backhand the like button, it does go a long way to support the channel, and let us know in the comment section down below what your thoughts are on the STB556. Do you like the weapon? Do you hate it? What are your favorite builds for it? Let us know down below. Also, let us know what weapons you want to see us review in the future, and get subscribed to stay up to date for those video releases going forward. Once again, guys, I hope you enjoyed today's video. Peace out, and I will see you guys all in the next one. Take care, guys. Have a good one.